Usual when you start a hearing and are instructed what you can say or can't say in an open and free democracy. But having said that, you mentioned in your testimony core inflation a couple of times. What's the difference between core inflation and inflation?
Many people believe, or it is in general, energy prices and food prices, which are much more fast-moving. And I would say that energy prices will roll down when this Iran conflict ends.
So is gasoline considered part of core inflation?
Yes, sir.
It is. So those remarks, core inflation reflects gasoline prices.
Core inflation, it reflects the underlying trend in inflation and whether that inflation has become endemic to the system as it did during President Biden's
Has the
term.
war in Iran had anything to do with core inflation?
Sir?
Does the war in Iran have anything to do with core inflation? Or you can't answer that, or either, or are we precluded from asking that?
Well, I'm not sure what the question is.
Let me make it as simple as I can. Does the war in Iran, are you with me? Has the war in Iran
thus far,
have witnessed the rise in gas prices as it caused?
Well, again, that is the regular inflation, and gas prices have gone up, which I believe will be temporary.
Gas prices have gone up, but you believe they're temporary.
Core inflation has dropped 0.5% since President Trump came to office.
Geez, you know, when I'm home in my district, I'm going to just tell those people, geez, you know what? You've missed this whole thing. Don't you understand core inflation? You guys are better off. I mean, these gas prices, I don't know what you people are thinking out there. For God's sake, you know, you should be doing cartwheels in the street over the price of gas. So what is the administration's plan to lower gas prices?
We've taken the many.
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We have moved to.
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We would like to work.
Are you able to answer that, or is that not answered?
Well, if I'm not interrupted, I can, Congressman.
Well, I'm waiting for your answer.
We have asked Congress to move to eliminate the gas tax. That is done through statute.
You have moved that. So you're in favor.
Are you saying that core inflation reflects gas prices? Yes, sir. This simple dialogue was the first step in a logical trap that ensnared Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in his own words during the House Budget and Ways Committee on June 4, 2026. Connecticut Representative John Larson started with a single technical question, and that question dismantled Bessent's entire defense framework within minutes. Is the war in Iran related to core inflation? Larson asked. Bessent said at first that he didn't understand the question. Larson repeated, "Let me put it simply. The war in Iran, are you following me? Did the war in Iran cause rising gas prices? Did the war in Iran cause gas prices to rise?" Bessent's response came, "Gas prices have risen, but I believe this will be temporary." Bessent's response came, "Gas prices have risen, but I believe this will be temporary." Larson immediately caught on. "So gas prices went up, but you believe this will be temporary." This temporary word came out of Bessent's own mouth. It was recorded, and it has become the centerpiece of the Democrats' 2026 midterm campaign. The first step of Larson's inquiry, what is core inflation? Larson's strategy did not start with a direct accusation. First, he asked Bessent to define the key term he used in his testimony. Larson asked, "What is the difference between core inflation and inflation?" Bessent replied, "Generally, energy prices and food prices, these move much faster. And I can tell you this, when the Iran conflict is over, energy prices will roll over. And I can say this, when the conflict with Iran ends, energy prices will tumble." This answer appears to be technical and neutral, but Larson immediately caught the critical distinction hidden in that definition. Core inflation excludes energy and food prices. If gasoline is not included in the core inflation calculation, saying core inflation fell means ignoring the increase in real spending by citizens. Larson asked, "Is gasoline part of core inflation?" Bessent replied, "Yes, sir." Larson continued, "So core inflation reflects gasoline." Larson continued, "So core inflation reflects gasoline." This was a confession that undermined Bessent's own defense, because if gasoline is included in the core inflation calculation, the claim that core inflation fell would actually have to include the rise in gas prices, but Bessent was saying at the same time gas prices are rising. The term temporary became the focus of the debate. One of the most striking moments of the hearing was when Larson had Bessent use the term temporary, making it part of the official record. Bessent said, "I repeat, there was an increase in inflation and fuel prices, but I think this is temporary." Larson immediately interrupted, "So gas prices went up, but you think that is temporary?" Bessent replied, "Core inflation has fallen 0.5% since President Trump took office." This was quite literally the change the subject technique. "Temporary?" Larson asked. Bessent answered, but immediately jumped to another statistic. Larson said at this point, "God, when I'm in my district, I'm going to say to these people, God, you missed all of this. Don't you understand core inflation? You're better. So these gas prices, I don't know what you people think, for God's sake." This sentence is not just an expression of anger. Larson emphasizes how the technical statistics debate in Washington is so disconnected from the daily reality of ordinary citizens. Other instances of the word temporary, the same promise for months. The word temporary that Larson caught was not an isolated momentary expression. This was a reflection of a consistent pattern of speech that Bessent had been using for months. On May 3rd, in an interview with Fox News, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he was also confident that gasoline prices would fall very quickly with the end of the conflict with Iran. This temporary deviation, will end in a few weeks or a month. CNN, temporary deviation. This word choice had emerged as early as May, and the same word was repeated in the June hearing. Bessent said at the press briefing, "The message is short-term volatility, long-term gain." Bessent said at a news briefing, "The message is short-term volatility, long-term gain." Bessent said he was optimistic that we could see $3 gas between June 20th and September 20th. This estimate contains an interesting mathematical trick. Saying $3 gas could technically mean $3.99. That's not too far from current prices. Independent experts counterpoint, it could last until 2027. To understand how realistic this temporary claim is, we need to look at the assessment of independent energy experts. In the EIA's May short-term energy outlook, the agency projected that the average retail gasoline price would be $3.88 for 2026 and $3.62 for 2027. This is much higher than the average prices the agency projected in early February before the war began. At that time, it had forecasted $2.91 for 2026 and $2.93 for 2027. Skip York, energy and global oil expert at Rice University's Baker Institute, said, "A return to $3 gas looks more like a 2027 solution." Over the weekend, Energy Secretary Chris Wright told CNN that the average cost of gasoline might not fall below $3 by the end of this year or by 2027. This is a striking contradiction. The Treasury Secretary says between June and September, his own energy minister says by 2027, and independent experts are in line with the second forecast. Real data, from $2.98 to over $4. The most clear indicator of the economic impact of this crisis was the price difference before and after the conflict. Before the U.S. attack on Iran, the national average price of gasoline per gallon was $2.98 according to AAA's data. Today, however, this figure has risen above $4. The increase from $2.98 per gallon to over $4 means approximately a 35% increase. Moreover, this increase occurred directly after the war. Trump is making a bold promise to Americans as the midterm elections approach. He says gas prices will plummet when the war with Iran is over. But the thing is, there are very few people, including those in charge of energy management and economists who closely watch the markets, who believe that this drop will happen anytime soon. Larson's solution proposal: suspension of gasoline tax. Larson's inquiry was not limited to mere criticism. He also brought a concrete solution to the table. Larson was a co-sponsor of the Gas Price Relief Act, which would suspend the gas tax when the national average exceeds $3.99 per gallon and offset the costs by suspending tax breaks for gas and oil companies. During the hearing, Larson reached an agreement with the secretary to advance the plan to suspend gas tax and incentives. This is an extremely noteworthy development. Bessent, in the midst of a tough interrogation, agreed to advance the legal solution proposed by Larson. Bessent answered, "We asked for that," to the question, "Are you in favor of eliminating the tax cut?" Larson asked in the hearing, why isn't he coming to vote in front of the committee? That question went unanswered. If the White House really wanted this tax cut, why was the legislative process so delayed? The process has been difficult due to the demands of both sides, the fractured Iranian leadership, and rocket attacks in the Middle East. "I'm not running the agenda," Bessent's evasion of responsibility. One of the most striking sentences of this hearing was how the Treasury Secretary defined his own role. Bessent said, "I don't set the agenda." This sentence shows how the Treasury Secretary frames his own institutional role. If the Treasury Secretary is not setting the agenda, then the question of why the gas tax proposal has not been put forward to Congress becomes a question that should be directed to someone else. Larson replied, "Well, it's nice to hear that we support something that we can work on in a bipartisan way and that will help those who need it the most. Excuse me, but people in my district aren't doing backflips over this economy. They haven't seen the impact you claim. People hear a lot of talk, but it doesn't pay their grocery bills. It doesn't pay their heating costs. It doesn't put fuel in their tank. It doesn't help them get through the exhausting cycle of their daily lives." This passage carries the essence of Larson's inquiry. Abstract economic statistics do not align with real human experience. Twice, Bessent's counterattack. Bessent tried to build his defense throughout the questioning by repeatedly comparing it to the Biden era. Larson asked, "Is this war responsible for any of that?" Bessent replied, "Congressman, food at home has increased by 2.5% since President Trump took office," and he added, "This was double what it was every year during the Biden administration." This defense pattern overlaps with the cheaper-than-Biden framing from the earlier Burgum-Huffman hearing, but the question Larson asked was not merely comparative, but direct. Is this war the reason for these increases? And Bessent's answer, instead of addressing this direct question, shifted to another comparison. Democrats' ledger, the official documentation of the temporary admission. A factor that has strengthened the political impact of this crisis has been the Democrats' official documentation of this admission. The Budget and Ways Democrats account later noted that Bessent acknowledged the price increases were temporary. This official record is far beyond an ordinary note. It means the official recording of a quote that can be used repeatedly on social media and in press releases. Democrats argued that rising fuel prices, the near stalling of the economic growth, and the fund against arming financed by taxpayers have negated all the gains provided by last year's tax law. Fitzpatrick's unexpected outburst, Russian sanctions. One of the examples showing that the Republican side is not completely on the same page in the hearing came from Brian Fitzpatrick. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick took a different approach from many Republican members, questioning Bessent about sanctions on Russia instead of tax cuts. Specifically, he raised the issue of extending the sanctions waiver on Russian oil and asked whether the Treasury was ready to take tougher steps under the Russian Sanctions Act. This table reveals that the trial harbors differences not only between parties, but also within the same party. Conclusion: the word temporary and a repeated discussion. At the center of this story lies a single word: temporary. Bessent said, "Fuel prices have risen, but I believe this is temporary," to which Larson responded, "So fuel prices have increased, but you think this is temporary." This word is the same one Janet Yellen used for inflation during the Biden administration, which drew significant backlash. Historical repetition is occurring in an extremely striking manner. Independent experts said the return to pre-war price levels will take longer than Trump and Bessent's statements imply. Larson's inquiry made this contradiction visible in a single dialogue. Bessent acknowledged that gasoline is included in core inflation. He argued that core inflation was falling, but at the same time he said gas prices were rising and that it would be temporary. This